Okay, I want to tell you a little bit about Jerry. Jerry has caused a lot of excitement. Jerry looks like Rosh Hashiva, but Jerry he has a sensor company where he puts wireless sensors in commercial buildings, generally for sensing if there are leaks in commercial buildings. And Jerry is just a passionate fellow, and he figured, I work with sensors. Eruv could use sensors to give everyone a heads up if something goes down. And he's a boyish person. He's excited like a kid. Very often I have to tell him to slow down, repeat himself, because he's so excited about this Eruv project. He's invested a lot of his own resources, a lot of his time. I'm sure his wife loves it also. And he's just brewing with ideas about how to help Eruv and how to make his own contribution. So without further ado, Jerry, and thank you on behalf of everyone. There are people here who came just because they're so excited that you're here.
All right. Well, I'll make it exciting. For a couple of points. First of all, I want to thank and recognize Rabbi Tauber and Rabbi Carniel, if you could raise your hand for a second, who are my partners in crime on the Manhattan Eruv. It's a pleasure being here. This is like when I hear about Yaakov Avinu and the Malachim, Olim V'Yordim, and I'm saying, oh my God, what kind of people would want to spend their lives on ladders going up and down? They're only Malachim. And now I have a whole room of Olim V'Yordim people. It's gewaldic. The other thing I wanted to say is, this is not a panacea. This is like Sapiches b'dvash, okay? This is mun. The Bnei Yisrael had many complaints. We want water, we want meat, we want this, we had Yerushalayim, and Hashem, when we had Mitzrayim, Hashem said, I'm giving you mun, it's gonna taste like whatever you want it to taste like, okay? In the case of the Manhattan Eruv, which is 152 fishing line, it's a 25-mile Eruv, and 5 miles of it, 152 points, has Eruv wires. In this case, we made a deal with Rabbi Tauber, Rabbi Carniel, that if it proves reliable, maybe it will replace the Thursday inspection. There's a Thursday inspection and there's a Friday inspection, right? And so really, we're not gonna, the fact that it's not slov and it's not this, it's that, it's whatever you want it to be, okay? So let's talk about the technology. And if you scan this QR code that you have there, it'll take you to a handout that has a few things. It has at the top, well, at the very top, it has the agenda of what I'm going to talk about. After that is a horizontal line of 142 sensors, which is the Manhattan Eruv, and you can see the tilt angle for all of the sensors over the last 24 hours. And you can see in one view, none of them have reached the 1,000 microgram line, which would indicate a tilt in this way. I'm going to discuss that with you in a minute. Okay. The approaches we've taken to sensors is to use tilt sensors. There are other approaches one can use. One can use tension sensors, right? But tilt sensors let me determine on each particular line at what point I want to consider it deviant, anomalous. So for example, there's one or two lines that the line itself is tilted. It goes from Manhattan Bridge Plaza down to a lower pole. And so its natural condition is tilted and it's not considered broken until it goes this way. By using a tilt sensor, and I'm going to explain this to you now in a moment, it also allows us to check other conditions, such as a line being pushed out too far this way or sagging. And we haven't done that just yet, but it's possible. So let me tell you the mechanics of a tilt sensor. This is an Eruv sensor, okay? This is the sensor itself. It is in a waterproof plastic case. It's in a second waterproof case. It clamps on the Eruv line with 2 sets of magnets. It uses soft vinyl because if you use a hard surface with the wind, and it's going to chafe on the line and eat away at the line. If you use a surface that is softer than the line, it won't do that. Okay, we usually have 2 magnets. Now we moved up to 3 magnets. It sits on the line. There is a mounting tool that we are experimenting with because up until now we had our truck mounting them, but we have a tool that you can put at the end of a 30-foot pole that I'm working on here. That will allow you to spread the halves and push it up around the line and squeeze this thing and be able to mount and dismount it from 30 feet below. And we have a tether line. So this end here attaches to the lamppost. Why do we need that? Well, first of all, it gives us a very definitive indicator if the line breaks. Theoretically, you could have a line break, and by a miracle, the sensor could fall straight down, and it might not register any change. With a tether, when the line breaks, it goes like that. It rotates 90 degrees. You don't. Now, there are instances when you can see partial rotations. For example, we added some sensors in Miami, and we were seeing a lot of up and down during the day. And Dove Kaufman there said, yes, it's the birds. We have birds that jump on the lines and bounce around a little bit, right? And so technology-wise, we've set for our use case a 60-minute limit, that it doesn't send an alert until it's been tilted the right amount for 60 minutes. So you see a lot of the activity. Let me explain to you what an accelerometer is and how it works. There are 3 axes here. This is the x-axis, okay? When it's horizontal, it reads 0. When it's vertical, it reads 1,000, okay? So this is 0. This is 450. This is 990, okay? This is minus 990. That's the x. That is the main axis that we are monitoring. There is a y-axis. The y-axis is this way, okay? If the Eruv is sitting straight, the y-axis is always pointing down. It's going to be close to 1,000. If it falls down, the y-axis is not pointing down anymore. It's pointing horizontally. It's going to be 0, okay? If it moves in the wind, it's going to vary, 400, 500, as it flips sideways, okay? This is the z-axis. It goes right through the Eruv, right through the sensor, okay? If the sensor is this way, it's going to be 0 because it's level. If the sensor is this way, it's going to be 1,000, okay? So a sensor that is on the line has a 0 x-axis, a 1,000 y-axis, and a 0 z-axis, if it's lying like this, okay? If the line breaks, the x-axis goes up to 1,000, the y-axis goes close to 0, and the z-axis is unchanged. It's going through it, right? If it falls down, well, the x-axis is going to be 0, the y-axis is going to be 0, and the z-axis is going to be 1,000 because it's pointing down. So that's the logic of what we've done, and that's the details of the sensor. Now, by the way, I suggested to Rabbi Sarna, because there's a lot of potential questions that people could have, if people wanted to, we could designate 2 or 3 evenings that he can set up where we can get onto a Zoom, anybody who wants to, and just kind of answer more very specific questions, okay? So now, this broadcasts the data, and there are 2 approaches as to how the data travels. One approach is if you have a single location, let's say you have one location here, one pole, 2 lines, one there, very far apart, you just wanted to monitor those lines, you would use this solution. This is a Bluetooth sensor that sits on the line. Again, same thing, accelerometer, but it transmits only 50 to 100 feet. This is a standalone box that reads that data and sends it out via cellular once an hour. It's got 8 lithium batteries in here. It can survive for about 3 or 4 years. Where we've put these out, we've mounted this maybe 10 or 12 feet from the ground, and this goes 30 feet because you could change the batteries. You don't have to get to this battery will last for 10 years. So that uses Bluetooth, and this uses cellular. Where we have sensors in a row, like 145th Street has like 40, 50 different lines going from the river to so-and-so, or 112th Street, or even by the Staten Island Ferry, we have like 8 sensors in a row, a lamppost 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet apart, one after another. We use a different technology, not Bluetooth, we use LoRaWAN. This goes 50 feet. This will communicate with this gateway over half a mile or even a mile. Okay? So we can put a whole bunch of these out, and we just have to put one of these every 5 or 10 blocks, sometimes even more. This, however, needs more power. This, unlike this cannot run on batteries. So the options are, if you have balabatim that live near the Eruv that want to plug this into their house, that's fine. It has a cellular chip. It doesn't require anything other than being plugged into a line. If you don't have that, then you've got to come up with another approach for power. So we've developed solar panels and boxes with batteries. So there's a couple of ways of doing this, and there's an interesting problem which there may be 2 solutions to. On cloudy days, or in the winter when the sun is weaker, after 3 or 4 days, this size panel doesn't really have enough to power this for more than 3 or 4 or 5 days without sun, especially in the winter. But we have a special device here, which is a timer device, like a Shabbos clock, where we can say, hey, I don't need this sensor to be, I don't need this gateway to be on all the time. Turn it off Friday afternoon and turn it back on Monday. Or turn it off every day and turn it on just for 3 hours in the morning. So we're probably, now that it's winter, going to start installing these and figuring out when we don't need it to work. But it also skirts the issue which needs to be asked, which is, at what point do you want to not know that your sensors are down so you can rely upon the chazaka? You don't want to know during your 18 minutes, right? So that's, I leave that up to my team there to decide that, okay? So that's the gist of how this solution works. You will see in the handouts that I gave there, you will see the visualizations. You will see the raw data, the X and the Y and the Z, and you can deduce the position of the sensor based on those values. You'll also see there's a mobile app that shows the status of every sensor and gateway, and a copy of a text alert that goes out as soon as it detects that a sensor is tilted. And Rabbi Tauber and I, we communicate every Thursday. That's the moment of truth, because he inspects Thursday. And I said, Rabbi Tauber, is this what you found here and here and here? And he says so far, yes. Except he says, well, no, that sensor fell off the line. So the line is good, but the sensor fell off. That's these here that have the rigid cases. So if you have enough wind, it can cause it to fall out. We're going to replace these with the same vinyl as the other sensors. That's about it. There are other options. I've heard from some people that have Eruv in London and in Australia that they have a problem with the lechis because they don't use lechis that attach to the rope. The ropes or wires are attached to a building, and they line the lechi up underneath it. And if somebody knocks over the lechi, it doesn't affect the wire. So you'll see on that folder a design for another approach where you have a sensor on a spring that connects, Sulam Mutzavar Tzavrosha Megashamayim that goes up to the top there, that maybe can monitor both. But I'm sure that there can be a lot of examples that are going to need special things. This is just the beginning. So I think that's about, cost, yeah, sure. These sensors are around $70 a piece. These gateways are $600 a piece, okay? So the Manhattan Eruv, if we didn't need these solar panel technologies, if you figure out we have 16 of these, right? So that's 7 times 16, like $12,000, right? We have 150 of these at $70 a piece. So it's about $20,000, right? And it's exciting to be able to look at that graph that you saw there and to be able to, in one glance, to see all your sensors are good before you go to sleep at night. It's been a good day for my Eruv lines. If you have to start doing solar panels, you need the batteries, you need the charging controller, you need the bracket, so then you're going to add another, maybe double the cost, $20,000 for like 16, depending on how many you need. Because it's not hugely expensive, but it adds up. There's no. This benefits from the economies of scale of all the sensors that we're doing for the rest of our business. This is custom. Yes.
Regarding the one on top, I didn't hear the word, what you called it. It started with L?
Yes, LoRaWAN, LoRaWAN. LoRaWAN is technology that is 900 megahertz, special spread spectrum, and it works in buildings, inside buildings, 50 times better than the 2.4 gigahertz technologies. Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave, that's all 2.4 gigahertz. It lets you send a lot of data, but it doesn't penetrate shortwave. LoRaWAN lets you send 11 bytes at a time, small packet, but at 900 megahertz, and within buildings, it'll travel 4, 5, 6 floors. And outdoors, it can travel three quarters of a mile.
About the lake itself.
When a line breaks, does the sensor also break?
No. The sensor hangs from the line, from the tether line.
Is this like using a camera or expensive?
It's much cheaper than using a camera. Though, if one had to do a camera, one would use a box like this, which is batteries and cellular, right? You would have it programmed to take 1 or 2 snapshots at the very same angle each week and transmit it. And then you would do computer vision to say, can I see the line? Has it moved? Has it not moved? So it's not the only approach.
Any thoughts about Z-Wave long range versus LoRaWAN?
LoRaWAN has many, many pluses. Z-Wave, first of all, the first plus is that it's not paired technology. So if you have multiple gateways, every single one of them can hear a sensor. And sometimes we have sensors being picked up by some of our other customer buildings. So yeah, it's really it's becoming a dominant standard. Yes.
There are many in there that I checked. There are many lechayim that have the screw on the top, and many of weeks I've just come by, and the screw has broken through the lechi. The string is not altered in the slightest. It's still exactly the same exact line, but just the screw is now out. So now it's a shadow. It's puzzle because it's not directly on top of the lechi anymore. The string didn't move at all. How would the
Well, but let me ask you now, if it's 30 feet in the air, how are you checking it now? You know what I'm saying? You're not looking from above, but in answer to your question, anything can be added to the sensor. You can have a reed switch with a magnet, which when it drops, changes its location. It will trigger an alert. It's not limited only to using the accelerometer tilt position. And as a matter of fact, with the lechis going down, like a magnet, an alarm or read switch is definitely possible. So I imagine there are going to be a lot of customization needs. Yeah.
So, did it check the tightness, how taut the wire was to change? In that scenario, that's what's really changing.
So the tightness of the wire is a little bit a function of the tether. Okay. If I've got a short tether and the line sags, I'm going to see it.
But when in a scenario like this, where the screw, let's say, pulls out, the sag is minuscule.
Yeah, but is it halachically significant, the sag?
Yeah, not the sag. It's the fact that the wire down the left.
Okay, so that again, I don't think that something small like that is probably not. You don't want to rely upon the accelerometer because, you got the wind blowing. You could have a sensor that is flipped up and lying on top of the Eruv line. You would want to designate something specific for that. And it's not hard to add. Again, you can add a lot of things to this sensor if there's a market. Rabbi Tauber, Rabbi Carniel, would you like to say anything? No?
Thank you so much. I didn't prepare anything. You did a great job in explanation. Thank you.
Any questions for Rabbi Tauber? That's it?
You get a lot of false positives?
No. So far, the only false positives we've gotten is when the sensor has fallen off the line and the line was intact. So that's, yeah. I'm more concerned with the false negatives than the false positives, right? That we have not had any. Yes?
You've spoken about integrating this with the Eruv app.
We did. I mean, they serve slightly different purposes. The Eruv app is a good tool for people repairing Eruvs who need to know and communicate where to go and where not to go. In this case, when you deploy a sensor, you name it. So the sensors you'll see in that list there are called, this is 2nd Avenue run number 3, corner of 49th heading northwest. So it's but it's doable. Yeah, absolutely.
Say in the Eruv app, you have green, you have red, but there was like an orange state. The sensor says it's bad, you just have someone to check it, right. And then you can either change it to red or green.
Yeah, it could be done. It could be done. It could be done. I mean, from the user's point of view, it's binary. I can carry, I can't carry. So it depends what the community wants to use. Yeah. Yes, anything? Okay, so the challenges for the Eruv was it took probably a year to figure out which metrics to use on the sensor level, together with the tether and the whole, we tried many options. And then it probably took about a year to figure out how are you going to get the data from here to the internet without an electrical outlet. We looked at helium, we looked at Amazon Sidewalk, we originally tried pure cellular for this box. So there were many, it took, they finally raised the amount that they were paying me to do this, and I got it done. By the way, I wanted to mention, I was speaking to somebody, this gentleman here is an electrical engineer. There's a lot of things that could be done if the OU and Rabbi Sarno, who's involved with technology and mezuzah and other stuff, could develop a little hacker skunkworks lab someplace. We talked about the possibility of having a valve closer that shuts the cold water supply into the boiler, Erev Shabbos, and that opens it up so that you can use hot water on Shabbos because it's not. What? Yeah, I'm just saying, but you can have an unzero one. You need an unzero one, you know what I mean? It's not.
The engineering team in San Diego has done they built the prototype about 5 years ago. Jennifer came to look at it. We've done the valve. We did a Shabbos. So if anyone's interested in hiring high school graduates, let me
Yeah, right. It's a fun area. It's a fun area. Yes.
Is it a technical reason why the data that comes from the X, Y, and Z axes are not just 0 is where it should be for each of them?
It's very sensitive. It's microgravities. So the numbers represent 1/1000th of a gravity. Okay, so it's hard to imagine. Like now, that's why if you have wind, you can all of a sudden have a spike, because it's like when you floor the gas on your. If you imagine a seesaw, right, of equal weight, and you say, what is the gravity of this side of the seesaw? 0. It's in balance, right? But now you tilt it all the way down, and you say, how much force? Let's say I weigh 200 pounds. How much force do I need when it's this way? 100 pounds. How much do I need when it's that way? So it's not 0 because it's extremely sensitive, the accelerometer. Yep.
Similar to this point, can you just for 1 second again, if there's a minor deflection, a new utility pole is installed and it's now touching the line, it's deflecting it a little bit. So it will just be, the numbers will be, it'll be 22, it'll be 200.
It'll be a different axis.
And then how do we get that now? How do we get that? Know that there was a minor deflection.
Well, we create the algorithms, the alert rules. The data comes in. Right now, the main alert rule we've created is along the x-axis, right? And we average it out to not respond unless it's over the threshold for 60 minutes. So you could fine tune it. If you had other conditions, you'd have to study it. You'd have to say, this is really statistics and standard deviations, which is the numbers fluctuating, which pattern of fluctuation actually indicates a stable, sustained condition versus something else. It's possible, but sometimes you can just add something to the sensor, that detects a tension spring or something. Yes?
The system can't replace an Eruv checker because there's many other things you got to check. The bottom of a lefty could be cracked. A worker can tie the string around the pole. It'll stay straight. It'll be around the pole or something.
Well, it could tell you which strings someone has touched, right? And you can have for the lechi a contact switch like alarms have, so that if it moves off of a magnet, So this is only, again, sapichas b'dvash. It does what it does. It can do more if somebody wants it to do more, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't need further development.
Do you plan on using it to replace the Eruv checker?
Me? Chas v'shalom. Rabbi Tauber would then spend his time faharing me on the Talmud the whole time. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the first time I rode with him at 5:30 in the morning, he's zooming around all these streets, and then he's talking to me, and then his son calls from Israel for their Daf Yomi shir. So he's doing Daf Yomi, talking to me and the wires. So if this helps him in any way, his son will say thank you.
It's a very, very practical application, not replacing checker. If you know on Monday, we check Thursday, Friday. If you know on Monday that your line is down, it's much easier to get fixed on Monday.
Right. That's right. There are efficiencies in knowing. Yes? Are we done? Yeah, next question.
This is also for custom lines. Would this be used on electric poles that are going to go out?
I mean, you could the electric company use this to tell us when their electric lines go down? Sure, they could. You could do anything you like. Again, the Eibishter created the world. That includes where the electrical lines are. Okay.